Hi, friends. It's Deanna Williston from Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm here today with an encyclical of Pope Benedict XV on the Third Order of St. Francis. It was to the patriarchs, primates, archbishops, bishops, and other ordinaries. So it wasn't directly to the people of the Third Order, it was to those who were in charge of them and had care of them. Very interesting. Friends, before we do this, let's open with St. Francis's prayer before the crucifix. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Summe glorioso Deus, illumina tenebras cordis mehi, et da mihi fidem rectum, spem certum et caritatem perfectum, Domini ut faciam tuum sanctum et verax mandatum. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. This is so exciting. I heard this like casually mentioned somewhere and I was like, wait, I've never heard this encyclical of Pope Benedict XV to the Third Order of St. Francis. It's called Sacra Propendiem. Let's go ahead and read it together. Venerable brethren, health and apostolic the benediction. You'd think it'd be health and apostolic benediction. Maybe it's not the world's best translation. Let's go ahead and see. With regard as to the most opportune that solemn festivities will be held for the 7th centenary of the Third Order penance, many motives prompt us to exalt the occasion in the eyes of the Catholic world in virtue of our apostolic authority. But before all is the hope of the incontestable advantages which the Christian people draw therefrom. How exciting! We're on like the 800th anniversary now. So this was from the 700th anniversary. This is so exciting. This is so beautiful. Yeah, this was written in 1921. When I'm filming this, it's 2023. So how exciting. This is exciting. What was it like back when it was the 700th anniversary? Oh, this is so fun. Such a surprise. I really didn't look at it ahead of time. I love giving you my honest and true reactions to things. Let me start again because this is so beautiful so far. He has me so excited. Venerable brethren, help and apostolic the benediction. With regard as most opportune that solemn festivities will be held for the 7th centenary of the Third Order penance, many motives prompt us to exalt the occasion in the eyes of the Catholic world in virtue of our apostolic authority, but before all is the hope of the incontestable advantages which the Christian people will draw therefrom. Just saying, friends, if you're not in the secular Franciscan order, it is good and it should be holy, and we should be, or the brothers and sisters of penance. Who are we doing penance for? Ourselves? We're doing it for everyone. That's kind of the point. So how beautiful. They're saying, hey, maybe you should look at these guys. They're okay. They're not all just weirdos. He doesn't say that. I'm adding that in. They're numbered then 1. So that's the whole introduction. Then the paragraphs are numbered 1 through 26, and like the world's shortest conclusion ever. So short intro, short conclusion. This is a tiny encyclical as encyclicals go. And I don't think there are any, there are literally no footnotes at all. That's very odd. Or endnotes. Normally encyclicals have quite a few endnotes as well, but it says it is an encyclical. Okay. Let's read paragraph 1. Oh, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 is missing. Either it's misnumbered or paragraph 2 is missing. Oh my goodness, that's so wild. I have no idea what to say to that. I don't know. Is it misnumbered? Is it missing? I got this from the Vatican website itself. I don't know what to do with that. Wow. I don't know what to do with that. If anybody has the original with number 2 in it that can show us either where the numeral itself needs to go and the text is here, or can show us the missing text, thank you. So paragraph 1, and these really are paragraphs. They're not sections. Every single one of them is a paragraph. So that's what's really odd. You think I could just see that there was a paragraph without a number, but there's not. Okay. Number 1, in the next place, There is the personal remembrance which they evoke for us. We love to recall that in 1882, when the centenary of his birth spread amongst the mass of the faithful the fervent cultus of Francis of Assisi, we wish to range ourselves amongst the disciples of the great patriarch and receive regularly the habit of the tertiaries in the celebrated church of Epoch, served by the friars minor. Today, placed by Providence on the chair of the Prince of the Apostles, we are particularly happy to seize this occasion to testify our devotion to St. Francis in exhorting the Catholics of the entire world to affiliate themselves with eagerness or to remain faithfully attached to this Franciscan institution, which today responds marvelously to the needs of society. Which Pope? Yeah, this is Pope Benedict XV. I've never heard of this. Never heard of. Wow. It doesn't say that he became a secular Franciscan here. Now I'm going to have to look it up. But he wished to become one. Interesting. When the centenary of his birth. So it must have been a great celebration in 1882. Again, I've heard nothing of this, so I'm kind of excited. 3. That which matters now is to replace before eyes the true moral physiognomy of St. Francis. The St. Francis of Assisi, whom certain moderns present to us, and who springs from the imagination of the modernists, this man, guarded in his obedience to the apostolic see, a specimen of vague and vain religiosity, is assuredly neither Francis of Assisi nor a saint. He is calling out here the modern version of St. Francis. This is so mind-blowing. He's like, it's not that romantic fool you've seen in movies. They didn't even really have movies then, but he's saying it's not that romantic fool from the imagination of modernists. This is amazing. 4. The striking and immortal services rendered by Francis to the Christian cause, which have shown him the defender whom God in such troublous times reserved for the church, found, as it were, their coronation in the third order. Is there anything which proves more clearly the greatness and violence of the burning desire which consumed his soul to spread throughout the whole earth the glory of Jesus Christ? 5. Profoundly saddened by the misfortunes which the church was then passing through, Francis conceived the incredible design of renewing everything conformably to the principles of Christian law. After having founded a double religious family, one of brothers and the other of sisters, who pledged themselves by solemn vows to imitate the humility of the cross, Francis, in the impossibility of opening the cloister to all whom desire of being formed in his school, drew to him, resolved to procure, even for souls living in the whirlpool of the world, the means to attain to Christian perfection. He founded then an order properly called tertiaries, differing from the two other orders, in that it would not bear the bond of the religious vows, but would be characterized by the same simplicity of life and the same spirit of penance. Thus, the project which no founder of a religious order had yet imagined. Why do I staple these? Had imagined to cause the religious life to be practiced by all, Francis first conceived of the idea of, and the grace of God gave him to realize it with the greatest success. We have no other proof of it than this beautiful homage of Thomas of Celano, marvelous workman, whose example, direction, and teachings have this admirable result, to renew in both sexes the Church of Christ, and to lead to triumph a triple phalanx of souls preoccupied with their salvation. And that is from 1 Celano 15:40. 6. We shall confine ourselves to this testimony of so authoritative a contemporary. Of itself, it suffices amply to show to what a depth and to what an extent this initiative of Francis of Assisi shook the popular masses, what notable and salutary reparations it worked therein. Reparations. And I mean the kind, Jesus on the cross. Like First Saturdays, we are making reparations for offenses against Mary, the Mother of God, the Mother of the Church, and so consoling the heart of Jesus through doing that. So beautiful. 7. Uncontested founder of the Third Order, as he was of the first two, Francis was further, without a doubt, the most wise legislator. We know that for this work he had the precious aid of Cardinal Ugolino, who later, under the name of Gregory IX, was to make illustrious this apostolic see, and who, after having, whilst he lived, maintained the closest relationships with the Patriarch of Assisi, elevated later on his tomb a magnificent and sumptuous basilica. As to the rule of the tertiaries, no one is ignorant that it was regularly approved by our predecessor, Nicholas IV. 8. But we shall not, venerable brothers, delay ourselves too long on these questions. Our object is here, before all, to bring light, the character, and, as one says, the particular spirit of the third order. For the Church expects from it special advantages for the Christian people in this age, as hostile to virtue and to faith as was the epoch of Francis of Assisi. Amen. With his profound sense of situations and times, our predecessor, Leo XIII, of happy memory, desirous to adapt better the regulation of life of the tertiaries to the social level of each of the faithful, brought by the Constitution Misericordiae Dei Filius, 1883, to their statutes or rule most wise motivations, which should put them in accord with the actual state of society. He modified it in some secondary points, responding but imperfectly to our customs of today. 9. Quote, "Let none believe," said he, "that these changes take away anything whatsoever from the essential principles of that order. We wish absolutely that they remain in their integrity and secure from any branch." End quote. The rule of the third order has then undergone only retouchings of detail. Its range and spirit have been respected, which remain what their holy founder willed them. Now, I'll pause there. They're talking about the Leonine rule. This is not our current rule. Now it is our conviction that the spirit of the third order, altogether impregnated with the wisdom of the gospel, would be a powerful element for making healthy of private and public orals. I wonder if that was meant to be morals. I don't know, orals. If it were spread anew, as in the times in which, by his word and example, Francis preached everywhere the kingdom of God. 10. What Francis wished to shine out above all in his tertiaries, and which ought to be as their characteristic mark, is fraternal charity. Most watchful guardian of peace and concord, knowing that charity is the special commandment brought by Jesus Christ and the synthesis of the whole Christian law, St. Francis was careful to make of it the spiritual rule of his children, and he attained this result, that the third order rendered naturally the greatest service to the entire human family. 11. Further, Francis was powerless to contain in the recesses of his heart the seraphic love which consumed him for God and his brothers. He was compelled to permit it to overflow on all the souls which he could reach. Thus it was that he set himself to reform the individual and family life of his disciples, informing them to the practice of the Christian virtues with such ardor as would make one believe that it was all his program. But he did not dream that he ought to limit himself to this. Individual conversion was but an instrument of which he availed himself to reawaken in the bosom of society love of Christian wisdom and to gain all men for Christ. We really can't get lost in, it's so hard to say. When he's talking about that seraphic love overflowing even to the third order, and then he immediately goes, not to social justice warrior, which is where I kind of thought this was going, but he's saying, no, reform individual and family life to the practice of Christian virtues with such ardor, right? And then individual conversion is an instrument. So his seraphic love overflowed to cause our individual conversion and to reawaken in the bosom of society love of Christian women and to gain all men for Christ. That is the program right there. Paragraph 11. You may want to read that 15, 16 times. Let's read it one more time. Again, just for us. Where was that? Where did that start? Over here. Further, Francis was powerless to contain in the recesses of his heart the seraphic love which consumed him for God and his brothers. He was compelled to permit it to overflow on all the souls which he could reach. Thus it was that he set himself to reform the individual and family life of his disciples, informing them to the practice of the Christian virtues with such ardor as would make one believe that it was all his program. But he did not dream that he ought to limit himself to this. Individual conversion was but an instrument of which he availed himself to reawaken in the bosom of society love of Christian wisdom and to gain all men for Christ. That's the end of the secular Franciscan order, to help gain all men for Christ. 12. The preoccupation which had moved Francis of Assisi to make of the members of the Third Order messengers and apostles of peace in the midst of the bitter discords and civil wars of his time was ours in the days wherein the conflagration of a horrible war was kindled in almost the entire world. It has not ceased to be so at a moment in which, here and there, the smoking hearth of this ill-extinguished conflagration still shoots out flames. How prophetic. Again, this was written in, I gotta get it here, 1921. Wow. He had, maybe he had hope that the secular Franciscan order could stop the Second World War. What hope. And perhaps we can stop the next big thing. I don't know. 13. To this scourge has been added the interior crisis which nations are going through. First of all, here it is. First, of the forgetfulness and prolonged disdain of Christian principles. We wish to say that this fight for the sharing of goods, which sets in conflicts the different classes of society, is so relentless that it threatens already to lead to a universal catastrophe. I mean, he knew. We have this same crisis now. People are calling for socialism in so many countries. Like all these countries, we fought to stop the spread of communism. Socialism is communism by another name. Look at what is going on in countries very close to us, including our own. 13, I'm going to read again. To this scourge has been added the interior crisis which the nations are going through. First, of the forgetfulness and prolonged disdain of Christian principles. We wish to say that this fight for the sharing of goods, which sets in conflict the different classes of society, is so relentless that it threatens already to lead to a universal catastrophe. 14. In this so vast field, wherein, as representative of the Pacific King, we have lavished our especially attentive cares, we make an appeal for the zealous help of those who claim for themselves Christian peace, but especially for the collaboration of the tertiaries. They will exert a marvelous influence in restoring concord in spirit, the day wherein their number and their efforts will be developed. It is then desirable that in every city, town, and in every village, do you hear that, friends? The secular Franciscan order is regularly shrinking. But what is the Pope calling for here? It is then desirable that in every city, town, and in every village, the Third Order count henceforth a sufficient group of members, not of inactive adherents satisfied with the mere title of tertiaries, but instead of those who spend themselves with zeal for their own salvation and the salvation of their brothers. Why even should not the various Catholic associations, which multiply everywhere, associations of youth, of workmen, of women, not affiliate themselves to the Third Order, continue that work for the glory of Jesus Christ and the triumph of the Church with the same zeal that Francis had for peace and charity? Ha! He's calling for all those other public associations. You should join the Third Order. You can still do your work. That'll be your apostolate in the Third Order. You should join the Third Order. Why? Go back to 11, which told us about... Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, and to say allergies are high right now, it's crazy. So he said he was reforming the individual and family life of his disciples, informing them to the practice of Christian virtues with such ardor, right? and our individual conversion is but an instrument of which we're going to use to reawaken in the bosom of society love of Christian wisdom and to gain all men for Christ. That's what we need in the third order. When was the last time your fraternity, whatever rule you're following, has talked about the souls of the world at large? How have you talked about winning all men for Christ, the triumph of the church? When was the last time you talked about that? I know a lot of Franciscans talk about ecumenism. Great. Wonderful. Is ecumenism having a prayer service with people just for the sake of having a prayer service with other people? Or is it for winning them to the Catholic Church? What are we doing with ecumenism? I think we've become lost in what it is. We think it's dialogue. Where's that dialogue going? We're just yapping. We invite each other to our services. Great. Wonderful. Are we really dialoguing to try and convert them to the Catholic faith? Is that what we're doing? And are we uniting then our efforts to go forth and win all men for Christ? What is the purpose of ecumenism as it is practiced today? It's just something to really think about. It's not an easy question, is it? It's not. Sometimes it sounds so great. Yeah, we want to be in contact and we want to be talking with them, but dialogue is when both sides come to the table. And it's in the original foundational manual, but there's some of the other formation manuals for further formation that really break apart what dialogue is. In an honest dialogue, both sides have to be willing to give something. What are we willing to give? Are we really entering in dialogue if we're not willing to give something? And the same can be said for the other side. I don't know how much we're genuinely dialoguing. And so maybe some of the ecumenism, the goal of that was to build deep relationships. You know, I've been talking about that a lot with my parish program and about building deep relationships. But I think what has happened is instead of building those deep relationships, we become very surface level. We're not really dialoguing. We're not even a place where we could have an honest dialogue. We are not entering into those deep friendships with those other groups. If we don't enter into deep friendships with them, we can't begin to dialogue. We can't actually become a unified church. Inviting each other to our services is great. God could use all the glory and all the worship. But when we do that, we are, I guess, in the spirit of dialogue, like if you've ever been to some of these ecumenical services, we're like taking out the most beautiful aspects of Catholicism so that we can have a prayer service with other people. We take out our blessed Lord in the Eucharist. We put him in another room so that we can worship him. That doesn't even make sense. So maybe the worship services aren't all that. I don't know. Like, what do you guys think? I hope you're putting comments below. I've had some great discussions on live shows. It's just so hard for me to do live shows. I'm a housewife. It's what I am. And I've got chores to do at weird times and stuff. And I'm not always available at the times that most of you are online. And so it's pretty difficult. So I have to do these shows. So I hope that you feel free to put anything in the comments. You know, you can email me personally. That's in the description or the about for the channel. So you can do that at any time. And I can always work that into another talk as anonymously as you want. So what do you think? What do you think about that ecumenism? Are we really winning souls for Christ? Are we really creating those deep friendships that would allow them to see the beauty of the Catholic faith? So here's the thing. We're inviting them in superficially, but we're keeping our most beautiful truths from them. How is that going to work? No, I think we need more. We need Eucharistic processions. We need to invite them in. Sure, they cannot have Holy Communion because they're not in communion. If you're not in communion, you can't have communion. That's the shortest version of that I think we have to have, whether it is a mortal sin or you don't believe in the tenets of the Catholic faith. If you're not in communion, don't get communion. It's the shortest version of that. And same for you Catholics, if you're going to a service at another church. If you're not in communion with them, don't get communion. I You think the word would say it all. Yipes. I am going to get back to, I think we're on 15. The peace for which humanity cries out is not that which the laborious treaty-making of human prudence can decree. But that which Christ brought by its message. My peace I bring you. I do not give it as the world gives it. John 14:27. The accords between state and state, or between class and class, which men have been able to shadow forth, will not be durable, and will not have the force of true peace, except on condition that they are founded on the pacification of hearts. Oh, that's what it meant up in 14 when it said Pacific King. Peace giving. The pacification of hearts. And that itself is only possible if duty has bridled the passions whence all conflict springs. Oh, have we bridled the passions in today's world? Nope, we let them fly. Just saying. Whence comes, asks the Apostle James, war and quarrels amongst you? It is not from your passions. Oh, is it not from your passions which combat in your members? And that is James 4:1. Now to regulate wisely all the movements inherent to nature in such a way as to make man the master, not the slave of his passions, submissive himself and docile to the divine will, the hierarchy, which is at the base of universal peace that belongs to Christ, in its action manifests a marvelous efficacy in the family of Franciscan tertiaries. There is so much to unpack in number 15. He's talking about mastering our passions. How many of us have done that? In fact, modern society tells you not to bridle your passions, that you should follow them all, do whatever, that you should have unregulated passions. I mean, even if you try to regulate what you eat, you're now called fat phobic. It's gotten that bad. They're telling you to do whatever. So many things have become legalized that should not be legalized. Man is not monitoring his passions at all. We're not called to master them. And yet, in the Catholic sphere, there are groups like Exodus 90 and Fiat 90. Some people say they're too hardcore. Some people say they can become a little cultish. But it is setting up a system of accountability among friends where you have faith sharing and deep friendships, and you are learning to master your passions. That is what 15 is about here. If we do not master our passions, we cannot have peace. I'll say it again. If we cannot master our passions, we cannot have peace. And you know that when you are not mastering your passions, and you can see it on TikTok videos, wherever you go, the people who are living out their passions unbridled do not have peace. They're very angry people. They don't have peace. And it is right here, back in 1921, right? The Pope was talking about this, Pope Benedict XV, number 15. And he's saying the way to help you do that, friends, is to become a Franciscan tertiary, which is kind of funny because our current rule got rid of a lot of those rules that were in there to help us monitor our passions. That's why I've called, I think through this journey of mine, time and time again, the rule in 1978. Fine, the old rules were abrogated, but we can still use them as a source of guidance, a source of richness, a way to live our lives. Maybe we are not still bound to them, but does that negate the wisdom of them? Absolutely not. I think whichever the rules you are following, the other rules have wisdom within them for you. Mind them for all they are worth. Mind them for all they are worth. Do not cast them aside. We are not bound to them, but they are still a model to us. Let's look at 16. This order having for its object, as we have said, to form its members in Christian perfection, even whilst they may be plunged in the embarrassments of the age. I really did not read this ahead of time. Whilst they may be plunged in the embarrassments of the age, so true is it that no state of life is incompatible with sanctity. It happens, as it were, necessarily, where the tertiaries in numbers observe faithfully their rule, that they are, for all about them, a source of encouragement in fulfilling their duties, and even to tending towards a perfection of life superior to the exigencies, I can't say that word, exigencies of the common law. The testimony rendered by the divine master to those who attach themselves closely to him, quote, they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world, John 17:16, may justly be applied to the sons of Francis, who, if they observe the evangelical counsels of mind and heart as far as possible in the world, may lawfully put to their account the words of the apostle, quote, as for us, we have received not the spirit of this world, but the Spirit which comes from God. 1 Corinthians 11:12. 17. They will seek then completely strangers themselves to the spirit of the world, to introduce the Spirit of Jesus Christ in the current of social life on every side to which they have access. Amen, friends. 18. I love that little short paragraph of 17. Mighty little paragraph, 17. 18. Now there are two passions today dominant in the profound lawlessness of morals, an unlimited desire of riches and an insatiable thirst for pleasures. He is not lying there. Say it again. Now there are two passions today dominant in the profound lawlessness of morals, an unlimited desire of riches and an insatiable thirst for pleasures. It is this which marks with a shameful stigma our epoch, whilst it goes ceaselessly from progress to progress in the order of all which touches the well-being and the convenience of life. It seems that in the superior order of honesty and moral rectitude, a lamentable retrogression leads it back to the ignominies of ancient paganism. Sorry, I already have trouble pronouncing words, and then it's true and horrible what he's saying. It's hard to get those words out. In that measure, in truth, wherein men lose sight of the eternal goods which heaven has reserved for them, they permit themselves to be more taken in by the deceitful mirage of ephemeral goods here below. And once their souls are turned down towards earth, an easy descent leads them insensibly to relax themselves in virtue, to experience repugnant for spiritual things, and to relish nothing outside the seductions of pleasure. Hence, the general situation which we note with some, the desire to acquire riches or to increase their patrimony, knows no bounds. Others no longer know, as formerly, how to bear the trials which are the usual result of want or poverty. And at the very hour in which the rivalries we have pointed out, set by the ears, the rich and the proletariat, a great number seem to wish to further excite the hatred of the poor by an unbridled luxury which accompanies the most revolting corruption. 19. From this point of view, one cannot sufficiently deplore the blindness of so many women of every age and condition, made foolish by desire to please. They do not see to what a degree the indecency of their clothing shocks every honest man and offends God. Most of them would formerly have blushed for those toilettes as for a grave fault against Christian modesty. Now it does not suffice for them to exhibit them on public thoroughfares. They do not fear to cross the threshold of the churches, to assist at the holy sacrifice of the Mass, and even to bear the seducing food of shameful passions to the Eucharistic table where one receives the heavenly author of purity. And we speak not of those exotic and barbarous dances recently imported into fashionable circles, one more shocking than the other. One cannot imagine anything more suitable for banishing all the remains of modesty. Ladies, this is part of why I'm here. I'm honest, I'm real. I try and be modest. I think you can even see I've changed kind of during this little journey, which you've been along with me on my Franciscan journey. I've changed the clothes I wear. There are a couple times where you may have seen me in videos attempting to wear makeup and look a little fancier. I've never really understood makeup. It's never been my thing. I've seen some people get really into it. And, my senior year in high school, I did an experiment where I never wore the same outfit twice in 2 weeks. I literally had a calendar. If you went to high school with me, you might not know this. I literally had a calendar senior year. I really did a social experiment on my classmates where I never wore the same outfit twice. I super did my hair and my makeup, And I got invited to so many parties and social circles that I was never in before that year. I was still totally not even in the in crowd or a popular kid, but the way people treated me changed completely. And that revolted me. And I wore mini skirts and things. Oh my gosh, I should not have worn. I wore mini skirts into church because no one told me that if you wear a skirt at the knees or above, when you go and bow before the Lord, you're showing your underwear to the people in the pews. Oh my goodness. And ladies, if you're in the choir and you're sitting in the front of the church and you're wearing a skirt that's above the knees, we can see your underwear in the pews. Please put on a decently long skirt. Please, you don't need to wear makeup and 18 layers of gel and hairspray. What is this? Let's look at number 19 again. I am completely down with this. I'm not going to wear makeup. There are some people in evangelization that say if you don't wear makeup, people aren't going to respect you. And I kind of say the opposite. We've got to walk the walk. Will people hear me? Maybe not at the same level. Maybe they won't initially hear me. Maybe they'll at some point be like, why is she like that? Maybe they can respect me in a different way. I don't know. But I have to be true to you and me. And I could sometimes, I'm a housewife. I could spend all this time doing my hair and then not have any time to make videos. There just isn't time in the day. And so I come to you, I'm real. Sometimes there's literally leaves and sticks in my hair because I've been doing yard work. I'm popping in here between chores. I was literally walking the dog and doing dishes before I came. So yeah, I'm a little sniffly from allergies. It's real. I'm real. And when I go to mass, I dress fairly modestly to start with. And when I go to mass, I almost always am wearing a long dress that is actually in conformity with the first rule of the tertiaries. So I wear like a very sedate blue. I do add scarves and things, and I'll admit that. So not in complete conformity, but I have a very plain, modest dress that I wear for church. And I do that on purpose. I'm going before the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. And there are people who say you should put on all of your finery. And I get that, because you do. But there's also okay, I'm wearing a modest, pretty dress. And I give glory to the Lord with my worship. I wear a veil. And any extra money can then be spent on the poor or whatever. So I don't know. I see both ways. And am I for plain Jane churches? No, I'm actually for very beautiful, ornate churches. So some people have something beautiful to look at Mass. They don't need to be looking at me at Mass. God knows my beauty. So I am modest, honest, and true. And I wear the veil. And I try and be honest with it. So I'm going to read this again. 19. Again, I did not read this encyclical. I love to give you my honest, real impressions. And I was a little hesitant as I'm, reading this, but let me read it again to you. 19. This is shocking, but it is in our rule, ladies. From this point of view, one cannot sufficiently deplore the blindness of so many women of every age and condition, made foolish by the desire to please. They do not see to what a degree the indecency of their clothing shocks every honest man and offends God. Most of them would formerly have blushed for these toilettes. I don't know how you say it. These products, as for a grave fault against Christian modesty. Now it does not suffice for them to exhibit them on public thoroughfares. They do not fear to cross the threshold of churches, to assist at the holy sacrifice of the Mass, and even to bear the seducing food of shameful passions to the Eucharistic table, where one receives the heavenly author of purity. And we speak not of those exotic and barbarous dances recently imported into fashionable circles, one more shocking than the other. One cannot imagine anything more suitable for banishing all the remains of modesty. 20. In considering attentively this state of things, the tertiaries will understand what it is that our epoch expects from the disciples of St. Francis. If they bring their gaze back to the life of their father, they will see what perfect and living resemblance to Jesus Christ, above all in his flight from the satisfactions and his love of trials in this life, had he whom they call the Poverello, and who had received in his flesh the stigmata of the crucified. It is for them to show that they remain worthy of him by embracing poverty, at least in spirit, and renouncing themselves, and in bearing each one his cross. I want to say that again because I know a lot of people have real trouble with the Our Father and the line, lead us not into temptation. And here it is in 20 to remember, the Holy Spirit led Jesus into the desert to be tempted. And we hear time and time again in the Bible that we are tested, right? Tested as by fire. We are being purified as gold. And so if we resist and we reject those, are we being purified? Like, I want to be purified in this life. Like, here's the thing. It's going to happen. Whether it's going to happen in purgatory or it's going to happen in this life, I'd rather get it over with now where I can have all these graces in the Eucharist and confession and so many people here to support me. I'd rather do this now. Let's read that little line again, paragraph 20. In considering attentively this state of things, the tertiaries will understand what it is that our epoch expects from the disciples of Francis. If they bring their gaze back to the life of the Father, they will see what perfect and living resemblance to Jesus Christ, above all, in his flight from satisfactions. That's what we're supposed to fly from, satisfactions, and his love of trials in this life. Had he whom they call the Poverello, and who had received in his flesh the stigmata of the crucified, it is for them to show that they remain worthy of him by embracing poverty, at least in spirit, in renouncing themselves, and in bearing each one his cross. 21. In what concerns especially the tertiary sisters, we ask of them by their dress and manner of wearing it to be models of holy modesty for other ladies and young girls, that they be thoroughly convinced that the best way for them to be of use to the church and to society is to labor for the improvement of morals. Ladies, that's directed to us. 22. Moreover, after having created diverse charitable works for the solace of the indigent in their wants of every kind, the members of this order would wish further, we are sure, to cause those of their brothers who are deprived of goods more precious than those of earth to benefit by their charity. Ooh. 22. World's shortest paragraph, but whoa. So we're going to create diverse charitable works for the earthly wants, right? For the solace of the indigent in their wants of every kind. We should still also work for the cause of our brothers who are deprived of goods more precious than those of earth to benefit by our charity. Wow. Our love needs to be extending out to others who have been deprived of their heavenly goods. Woo. We have to be evangelizing. And it's one of the reasons some of us feel like the little towel. Honestly, nobody outside of the state of Tennessee asks me about the towel. And I don't even know that they notice that I'm wearing it around my neck, but I wear a hat with the towel symbol on. And Tennesseans love the T is their symbol. In Maryland, it's the Maryland flag that everybody knows and loves and wears everywhere. In Tennessee, it's a big capital letter T. And the towel looks slightly different. So when I wear it, people are like, I'll get asked about this in Tennessee, but that's it. Nowhere else do they notice that I'm wearing this. And I purposely wear a wooden one, even to try and show that poverty. And, little handmade necklace that it's on. So many people wear gold ones or gold earrings of towels. I really don't think that's screaming, this is my habit. I don't think this is screaming my habit. So are we dressing the same as everyone else in the world? Are we dressing differently? How are we looking differently? Because people need to see our charity. Ladies, we are to be models of holy modesty for other ladies and young girls. And to help them, we need to labor for the improvement of morals. And people, yes, they may say, oh, she dresses modestly, and not know why. But I mean, at least that's a model. But I'm just saying, are we working for our brothers and sisters who are not in the church as well? Let's look at paragraph 23. We'll move on. Sorry about the nose. Here comes back to us the memory of the counsel of the Apostle Peter, asking Christians to be, by the holiness of their lives, models for the Gentiles. And this in order that, quote, remarking your good works, they glorify God in the day of his visitation, end quote. Peter 2:12. Like them, the Franciscan tertiaries ought, by the integrity of their faith, the holiness of their lives, and the ardor of their zeal, Spread abroad the good words of Christ, to warn those of their brethren who have gone out from the road, and to press them to re-enter upon it. Behold that which the church asks, that which she expects them. Woo! Yeah, friends, we're called to evangelize. Are we doing that too? I don't know. 24. As to us, we cherish the hope that the coming celebration will mark for the third order a new development, and we doubt not that you yourselves, venerable brothers, as well as other pastors of souls, will make great efforts to cause to flourish again the groups of tertiaries where they vegetate, and to create others everywhere possible, and to render all flourishing as much by the observation of the rule as by the numbers of their members. What? As much by the observation of the rule as by the number of their members. 25. In truth, what is in hand definitely is, by imitation of Francis of Assisi, open to the greatest possible number of souls, the way which will lead them back to Christ. It is in this return that resides the firmest hope of salvation for society. Friends, do you hear that? In truth, what is in hand definitely is, by imitation of Francis of Assisi, to open to the greatest possible numbers of souls the ways which will lead them back to Christ. It is in this return that resides the firmest hope of salvation for society. The words of St. Paul, quote, be my imitators as I myself am of Christ, 1 Corinthians 11:1. We can with good right put upon the lips of Francis, who in imitating the apostle has become the most faithful image and copy of Jesus Christ. Friends, we live in an age where environmentalism is so big and everybody wants to save the planet, and Francis is our way into that society. Are we going to these events, but also witnessing to Christ in these events? It is such an opportunity. And not to get lost, remember as the beginning of this encyclical told us, don't get lost in the romantic idea of Francis, but can we use nature as an in? We could use that as an in to evangelize people and to show them that. Absolutely, we can get out there in the trenches. It is an opportunity. 26. Thus, in order that these celebrations bear still more fruit upon the instances of the ministers generals of the three Franciscan families of the first order, we accord the following favors drawn from the treasury of the Holy Church. In all churches wherein the third order is canonically erected, and wherein will be celebrated by a triduum the solemnities of the centenary in the year to run from April 16th next, the tertiaries each day of the triduum, the other faithful once only, may gain a plenary indulgence from their sins. All the faithful who with contrite hearts will visit the Blessed Sacrament in one of these churches may gain at each visit, totis quotis, an indulgence of 7 years. How did we celebrate the rule that, did anybody celebrate the 800th anniversary of the rule? I didn't really see it. I don't know we were called to it. And we have a pope named Francis. Why were we not called to this? Okay, 26, number 2. There's under 26, there's 3 Roman numerals. So number 2. All the altars of these churches will be deemed for those 3 days privileged altars. During the course of the Triduum, every priest may celebrate there the Mass of St. Francis, following the rite of the Mass pro re grave et simul publis de causa, according to the general rubrics of the Roman Missal and started in the last Vatican edition. 3. All the priests who serve these churches may, during these same days, bless beads, medals, and other objects of piety, enrich them with apostolic indulgences, and apply to beads the crozier and Brigittine indulgences. There was so much, sounds like a really spiritual party here, and we didn't get it this time, and I'm kind of mad. As pledge of divine favors and in testimony of our paternal benevolence, we accord with all our heart to you, venerable brothers, and to all the members of the third order, the apostolic benediction. Woo woo! Given at Rome, near St. Peter's, the feast of the Epiphany of the year 1921 in the 7th year of our pontificate, Benedict XV. Wow. Wow, friends. Gonna have to put this in my nightly reading rotation for a while. And again, if you don't have copies of the older rules, you can find them online super easily and get there and read them. They may also be in the handbook for the Confraternity of Penitents. That is such a rich resource. totally, even if you're not in the confraternity, you need to get that book. There's so many great resources on penance and the Third Order of St. Francis in there. I think you're going to really be able to mine that. And it's great because it's bound in one volume. So it's super handy. This could actually be in there. I would bet that it's in there and I missed it. I'm going to have to go back and look because, wow, that is powerful. What do you think, friends? It's like, if you had any doubt of your Franciscan vocation, if you're not like putting a flag of St. Francis in your hand and to go out there and win all souls for Christ at the end of the reading that, I don't know. I don't know how you can do that. And if you are a secular Franciscan, have made yourself available to your parish priest. Please don't forget that. We can all end up with our own pet apostolates, and that's great. But, obedience is so big to us. And you know that Francis took himself obedience to his bishops, to his priests, and did as he was told. Sometimes he wasn't really happy about it, but he did it. And so we need to also be presenting ourselves to our parish priest. Say, hey, did you know that I'm a secular Franciscan? And how can I help in the mission of this church? And go ahead, ask him. He may have some great purpose for you. He may not, but we need to present ourselves and avail ourselves to our parish. That is the only way. I just love this. And we need to work on bridling our passions. We talk about the spirit of poverty. I don't know what in my fraternity, maybe your fraternity does, and maybe my fraternity has in other times, and I've not been there. Have we talked about bridling our passions and growing in our faith? We do talk about some really great things. Don't get me wrong, but these topics are jumping out at me. I don't know that we've ever really had a talk on modesty at all. So, and why it's important. It's uncomfortable to talk about modesty in this day and age. And you can have the argument, should ladies only be wearing long skirts and dresses? Should we only be wearing things that are cap sleeve or longer? What does that look like? How low cut can we go? Most of us are married. What does that look like in married life? Can we still go out on a date night with our husband? Can we find pretty, modest clothes? What about makeup? What about hairstyles? Do we need to have these really awkward conversations? Because in a way, some of that is tempering and bridling our passions. And yeah, it can be super nice to go out and you look really a certain way and all the eyes are on you, and that feels great in that moment. But what are you witnessing to? I mean, I know I'm pretty. I don't need to do all that. My husband knows I'm pretty. He doesn't need me to see me like that all day, every day. So I don't know. What do you think? These are awkward conversations. Honestly, I gave up pants years ago. I'm so much happier now that I'm in skirts. I feel more feminine. Some women I have found feel very vulnerable in skirts and dresses. And if that's you, ladies, we need to have that conversation, not avoid it. What can we do? And does your wearing pants make you feel so secure? Or, hear me out, is a different way to start bravely, boldly wearing those skirts and long dresses and trying to work on people's morals and helping them to bridle their passions, going in that direction. It can be a step. It is a step in humility as well. It really is. I mean, do I feel silly sometimes out there doing yard work in a skirt? Yes. But I'll put on like cowgirl boots or something to protect my legs. I'm not foolish about it. If I'm doing some really hardcore work, I do have a pair of coveralls that I can wear, but I'm not going out in them in public. I don't wear pajamas out in public. I don't wear yoga pants out in public. I was actually required to do that at a job, and it was horrible. So we really have to start thinking these things, having these hard conversations. Gentlemen, there's questions for you too. There are the whole skinny pants movement. There's the wearing your shirt unbuttoned. There's stuff that guys do too. Don't get me wrong, guys. You're in this conversation too. And yes, it seems so superficial to have that conversation, but it's not. It's a beginning. It is what people see most. Let's acknowledge people see our outside first. And so if we're looking very worldly, are they going to think that we're living worldly as well? Right? It's just like they say, am I going to get it wrong? Oh, what's that saying people have now? Lex orandi, lex. How we worship is affects how we believe, how we dress and go out in society does have an effect on our spiritual life. We need to admit that. And that's one of the reasons the original rule was very specific about clothing. And the second rule was very specific about your prayer life. I really think combining them is more the way to go. I would really love to see a combination of those first two rules. Really would. They really would. So you have more of the regulations on dress that really help us bridle the passions in our clothing and how we present ourselves to the world. There are other strong points in that. I'm just saying that is a strong point of that particular strong point of that rule. And the other one is so strong in our devotional life. Like even as simple as saying grace before and after meals. Who says grace after meals? I have to keep looking it up because I never learned that growing up, and I don't know what to say after the meal. And honestly, I forget. I get up and wander away, do my own thing, and I totally forget. That is something I'm still working on. But how beautiful it would be if we saw that modeled out in the world. We can be that model. Of course, we just ate this beautiful meal. Why would we not give thanks? We give thanks for the opportunity, and then we give thanks for the real food. Again, we see people, and that works in Mass. See how it works in Mass? People are now starting to call for a quiet time when we go into Mass. We had that thing for a while where everybody wanted to be greeted at the door and everybody wants to talk to as they go into the church like the Protestants do. But now people are saying, no, we reject that. We want to go in quietly. We want to have time for reverence. We want to really have time to open our hearts and minds and souls to the presence of God. And I'm seeing more and more people linger after Mass to do that bigger Thanksgiving and really spend that private time with the Lord. Now that they've received the Eucharist, they spend just a few minutes in prayer in quiet, because the choir is normally, or musicians are going the entire Mass, or there's something to do the entire Mass. The only time you can have that personal time with God is at the end, quiet, 5-10 minutes at the end of Mass. So same thing at our bodily, physical meal, right? Pray before, pray after. Same thing at the Mass. Pray before, pray after. Mass is food for our soul. You see how they balance? We need to get back to that. And so many of the things that we've rejected and cast off as old and outdated have beauty and meaning and will help us bridle our passions, have that inner peace so that we can have peace in the world, and so that we can grow our relationship with our brothers and sisters and with God, and we can all be together in heaven. Amen. Let us close out with the blessing of Brother Leo. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Benedicat tibi Dominus et custodia te ostendat Dominus faciam suum tibi et miseretur tui. Convertet Dominus voltum suum a te et Dominus bonus det tibi pacem. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen, brothers and sisters.